Hey everybody, this is Blake here. I'm going to be reviewing The Dark Knight Rises. I was really looking forward to this movie. I loved The Dark Knight, and I like Batman Begins too. But The Dark Knight really was a game changer. It wasn't just a comic book adaptation, it was an all-around great thriller. So did The Dark Knight Rises capture that same glory? No, but at the same time I thought it was really, or at least I really liked it. I wouldn't say it was a great movie. It is actually very flawed. Primarily because Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan, it seems like they had a lot of great ideas that they wanted to explore in Batman films, but at the same time they didn't really want to go past the trilogy mark, because usually once you get to like the fourth entry in a franchise, that's when it starts running out of steam. So what they did is they took all these great ideas and they crammed it into one movie, and that's the real problem here, is that you feel that there's way too much going on. There's a lot of unnecessary stuff. Some of these subplots you could have just tweaked a little bit and you could have probably removed them out completely, and it also lacks a distinct focus. But at the same time, I can't deny that I was still totally into it. I never was bored, which, considering this movie was like 3 hours long, that's a really good thing. And I thought some of the action was really good, some of the best that this trilogy had to offer. Batman Begins had some really shitty action scenes, I thought. Christopher Nolan, he was either trying to make a point that he wanted to have all of these action sequences take place from the point of views of the villains, to where you're supposed to be really disoriented by them, or he just really sucked when it came to directing action scenes at that time, because he was always using close-ups when he should have been using medium or wide shots. The camera was constantly moving around to a point where it starts becoming very jittery and disorienting, and it was just way too tightly edited to the point where all of the action scenes are so incomprehensible. Then The Dark Knight was a step up to where the fights are tolerable, but here the fights are actually pretty cool. There's nothing great about the choreography or anything. Technically Batman and Bane both move pretty lethargically, but at the same time I liked that there was some tactics used within the fight scenes. There was a lot of strategy there, and I was just totally into it. The first fight between Bane and Batman, I thought it was pretty edgy. I liked how it wasn't just Bane owning the crap out of Batman. Batman still does get some really good hits in, but you definitely feel that he's out of his league, that Bane is not just stronger than Batman, he's possibly as smart as him. And that makes Bane, I thought, a really cool villain. Now, is he as memorable as the Joker? No, but I'm not really sure if we could be objective as to whether the Joker was that much better, because Heath Ledger's death really added to that. But at the same time, I'd still say that the Joker was more compelling, but Bane was different, but in his own way just as compelling. I was really into that character, and I actually really did not like how his story was resolved. But it's funny because his accent, which seems to change at times, he reminded me of two voices from the Venture Brothers cartoon. One is that weird doctor who's, I can't remember his name, like Kissinger. He has this weird accent, and he has sort of like this Mary Poppins type of umbrella where he'll kind of fly away. And then Baron Underbite. I don't know why, but Bane reminds me of both of those characters in terms of his voice. But the problem with this movie is that, as I said, it doesn't really know what to focus on. Now, the Batman Begins, that focused more on Bruce's inner journey, and the villains were just there as part of that. Now, could this movie be going for the same thing? A lot of time is spent to just Bruce's inner turmoil and his inner struggles, but at the same time, everything else seems to be going on around him to where he's just not part of the plot. And with Batman Begins was that he really was the plot. All it was him cleaning up Gotham, and it was how that was affecting him. With this one, there's so much of a story going on around him or away from him that I can't really accept that. Or is it like The Dark Knight, where pretty much the entire movie was about Batman and the Joker trying to outsmart each other? This one could be about Bane and Batman trying to outsmart each other, but Batman gets removed after a certain point from the story to where it's more about Bane taking on the city of Gotham. So that doesn't really work either. And then there's a bunch of other subplots, like, is the movie about Batman's relationship with Selina Kyle, who is technically Catwoman? Not really. That's just kind of sparingly alluded to at times. Or how about his mentorship with Detective Blake, who might be a successor? And that unfortunately isn't explored a whole lot either. And same with all the other subplots, like between Batman and shit, what's his name? I can't think of his name all of a sudden. His butler. God damn, that's going to piss me off. Who's played by Michael Caine. I don't know why I can't remember his name. But Alfred, duh, fuck. But all these subplots, there's just no organization to them. They're just always there. There's no real main focus, and that just makes the movie seem very disorganized. Yet at the same time, all the subplots are really interesting too. So how can I really criticize that? I feel like maybe if they'd cut down some of these subplots, then at least they would have reached their full potential. Now, some ideas are, I think, explored to their fullest. Like, I like how the Wayne Industries starts to lose money and it starts facing a financial crisis. That was actually pretty cool because I don't think I've ever seen that in a Batman movie before. So that was really interesting. But at the same time, I kept wondering, why was Catwoman here? She actually does have a purpose, but it's the worst kind of purpose, in that she's pretty much there to be a possible romantic foil for Bruce. Now you could argue, well, she's the one who brought him back into the story, but they could have easily worked around that. And Catwoman in general I thought was a very flat character. Say what you will about Tim Burton's movies, but I thought Batman Returns had a much better Catwoman subplot. With that movie, you know, she was much more edgy. You weren't really sure if she was going to be redeemable, even though she's pretty sympathetic. And with this one, you pretty much know where that character is going from the moment you see her. And there's just really nothing to the character. The only time they try to give her any sort of characterization is through exposition, which Bruce is saying, even though he doesn't really even know her. So that was really annoying, even though I thought Anne Hathaway did a good job. The whole thing with the Detective Blake, you know, once again, there's a purpose there, but it just feels like an afterthought. Like they could have easily worked around that too, and I know what they were going for, but you know, they should have had maybe a fourth movie where they could focus on him a lot more, to where he does feel much more, you know, where he fits in more organically with the story. I do like, though, how the cops are pretty competent in this film. You know, Gordon is great. You know, Detective Blake is really intelligent, and you know, even though Bane constantly outsmarts them, it's just because he's a lot smarter. You never really feel the cops are stupid, other than that stupid-ass scene at the very end where they're all lined up in this narrow alley, like there's 3,000 cops or something, and they're getting ready to fight the bad guys. Nobody would ever do that in real life. That's the stupidest thing ever, especially considering the bad guys have guns. So it's inevitable that the first row of cops are going to get gunned down. I don't know what Nolan was thinking there. That's definitely not realistic at all. But so that's really the problem. It's kind of a mess. It needed to cut out some of these subplots and have a distinct focus. Is it going to be more about Bruce's journey? If so, make him part of the story, or make the story surround him a lot more. Don't make them seem like two different entities where you're watching Bruce and his internal struggle, and then it cuts to the real story of the film. Or make it about Bruce against Bane or whoever, but make sure it's always about their feud. Don't have Bruce be knocked off for a while Bane takes on everybody else. That was a big mistake, and had they had more organization to these subplots, it would have been an amazing film. But it was still compelling to where I really liked it. So that's where it's really difficult discussing, because, you know, I can complain about the subplots all I want, but I was still always interested in them. Acting-wise, you know, Christian Bale, I wouldn't say he's the best Batman. I'm really not sure who is, but he definitely has the most to do of all the Batmans, and he does a great job in that role. Tom Hardy made for a very effective villain. I really did like Bane in this movie. Anne Hathaway surprised me because I thought she'd be terrible, but, you know, even though she doesn't necessarily redeem the flat character, she was interesting enough. You know, everybody does a good job, and Nolan does a good job at making sure everybody has at least one standout scene. Whether it's Michael Caine or Gary Oldman or Morgan Freeman, everybody has at least one great scene. And the direction is good as always. You know, it's very minimalist, whereas with Burton films and Joel Schumacher's films, They were, much more stylish and flashy. Nolan just wants to serve the script, and he does a good job at doing that. The suspense is good. The atmosphere isn't quite as noticeable as with Tim Burton's movies, but it's still effective. And I like how he uses a lot more practical effects than CGI. When you see that bat plane in action, it is just amazing to watch. So, it was an all-around well-made film. It kept my interest, and that's really what matters, considering it's a 3-hour movie. But at the same time, it's just has a lot of flaws that you have to accept to really enjoy. My final thoughts are Batman Begins was a good comic book adaptation. The Dark Knight Rises was a great, or good if not great, thriller, and this one I think works only in the context of being a sequel. It is the perfect conclusion, but at the same time it is a very flawed movie, and it doesn't necessarily hold its own as its own film. So that's how I feel. I think that if you really like the first two movies, I guess I'd say it's worth a full price, but at the same time, don't have too high expectations. That's only going to make the film's failures stand out a little bit more. But if you were like maybe lukewarm with the other films, but you want to see this all the same, it's worth a matinee. But I did enjoy it overall. If you want to read my written review, just please check the link in my description. And that's all. I'll see you guys later.